I died at 32 in a hospital bed that smelled like bleach and broken dreams, with no one holding my hand. The cancer had eaten through me like my family had, slowly, methodically, leaving nothing behind but hollow spaces where something vital used to be. My last thought wasn't about the pain, it was about that interview, the one I never got to take. Then I opened my eyes to my childhood bedroom, and I was 21 again. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. The pink floral wallpaper my mother had insisted on, the desk with my college textbooks, the calendar on the wall showing March 15th, 2015. 11 years ago, 3 months before the interview that would ruin my life. My hands were young, unscarred, not yet worn down by years of factory work. I touched my face, smooth, full, alive. Not the hollow-cheeked ghost I'd become. I knew exactly what this was. I'd read enough novels during those long hospital nights. Rebirth, regression, a second chance. And I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. But first, I had to survive the next 3 months without letting them destroy me all over again. I could hear them downstairs already. Mom's voice, high and anxious, always anxious about what the neighbors thought. Dad's deeper rumble, agreeing with whatever she said because it was easier than having opinions. And Vanessa. My sister's laugh cut through the walls like it always had. Bright, confident, completely certain of her place in the world as the favorite, the pretty one, the one who deserved everything. The one who would take my interview slot and leave me with nothing. Not this time. I went downstairs because not going would be suspicious. They were all in the kitchen. Mom was making breakfast, her hands fluttering over the stove. Dad sat at the table reading the newspaper, actually reading it, not scrolling through his phone, because it was 2015 and he was still trying to pretend the internet was a fad. Vanessa was at the counter, painting her nails a shade of red that cost more than my entire week's worth of meals. "Oh, you're finally up," Mom said, in that tone that meant I'd disappointed her just by existing. "I was about to come get you. You know we have family breakfast on Saturdays." I'd forgotten, or rather the old me had forgotten constantly. Showing up late, earning disapproval. The new me knew every trap before I stepped in it. "Sorry, Mom, I was up late studying." I slid into my chair and smiled. Mom blinked. I never apologized, never explained. Usually I'd slouch in sullenly, take the criticism, eat silently. "Well," she set a plate in front of me, smaller than Vanessa's, always smaller. "That's good. You need to focus on your studies, since you're not naturally gifted like your sister." Vanessa looked up from her nails and smiled at me. In my first life, I'd thought that smile was sympathetic. Now I saw it for what it was, pity mixed with satisfaction. The winner's smile. "How's the job search going, Claire?" she asked, blowing on her nails. "I heard the market is really tough right now. So many qualified people competing for so few positions." I was in my senior year of college. Business degree, decent grades, nothing spectacular. In my first life, I'd been panicking about finding work. Every rejection had felt like proof that I was as worthless as my family implied. "It's going well," I said calmly. "I have an interview at Chentech in June." Mom's head whipped around. "Chentech, the software company?" "That's the one." I took a bite of eggs. They were cold. Mom had served Vanessa first, me second, and by the time she'd finished fussing over setting the table, mine were lukewarm. Story of my life. Lives. "How did you get an interview there?" Dad lowered his newspaper. "Those positions are incredibly competitive." "Professor Martinez recommended me. I helped him with his research project last semester." True in both lives. In my first life, that recommendation had been my golden ticket, the one chance to escape the slow suffocation of my family's low expectations and build something of my own. Then they'd taken it from me and given it to Vanessa. "Oh," Mom exchanged a glance with Dad. That's wonderful, honey." But she didn't sound like it was wonderful. She sounded worried. Vanessa had gone very still. "Chen Tech," she said slowly. "What position?" Junior product manager, entry level, but great benefits and room for growth. Mr. Chen is apparently very hands on with new hires. He likes to mentor people personally. I met her eyes. Why? You interested in tech suddenly? In my first life, Vanessa had been getting her degree in communications. She'd wanted to be a television personality, an influencer before that word had fully entered the lexicon. She had no interest in technology, no skills in that area, no qualifications whatsoever. That hadn't stopped her from taking my interview. I'm just asking, she said lightly. But her eyes were calculating. I could see the exact moment when the idea planted itself in her brain. Chen Tech. Prestigious. Successful. Marcus Chen, the young founder, was handsome, unmarried, and rapidly becoming one of the city's most eligible bachelors. I could practically see Vanessa adding up the numbers. Job plus attractive rich boss equals opportunity. In my first life, it had taken her 2 weeks to start her campaign. She'd begun casually, mentioning that she was thinking about switching her career focus. That technology was the future. That she'd always been interested in business, really, hadn't she? Mom and Dad had encouraged her, of course. When Vanessa wanted something, the family made it happen. Then she'd found out about my interview slot. Actually, Mom said, setting down her spatula, Vanessa, didn't you say you were thinking about career options? Maybe you should look into tech companies. You're so personable. You'd be perfect for that kind of environment, right on schedule. I don't know, Mom. I don't really have the background for it. Vanessa's voice was perfectly modulated, doubtful enough to be modest, interested enough to keep the door open. Neither does Claire, Dad said. She just said it's entry level. Thanks, Dad. The sting was familiar. He'd never believed in me, not in either life. Claire has a business degree, I pointed out, and a research experience. And the recommendation. Vanessa is a fast learner, Mom said, and she has wonderful people skills. You're more technical, Claire, behind the scenes. But Vanessa could really shine in a client-facing role. I watched it happen. Watched them take my achievement and reframe it as something Vanessa would be better at. Watched them convince themselves that my little sister deserved my opportunity more than I did. I let them talk, let them build their narrative. In my first life, I'd fought. I'd argued, pleaded, cried. It hadn't mattered. They'd worn me down until I'd agreed to call Professor Martinez and ask if there was any way Vanessa could interview instead. I had told myself it was fine. There would be other opportunities. Family came first. There hadn't been other opportunities. And family had let me die alone. This time, I just smiled and finished my cold eggs. It's an interesting idea, I said. Vanessa would definitely bring something unique to the role. Mom beamed. See, Claire understands. You two have always supported each other. Sure, the way a parasite supports its host, but I played along. Nodded when they suggested Vanessa explore her options in tech. Agreed that it couldn't hurt for her to just look at what's out there. Watch them slowly, inevitably, build toward the moment when they'd ask me to give up my interview slot. Because I needed them to ask. I needed them to do exactly what they'd done before. This time, though, I had a plan. That night, I opened my laptop, ancient by the standards of my first life, blazing fast by 2015 standards, and got to work. The thing about living through 11 years twice is that you know things. You know which companies are about to explode in value, which cryptocurrencies will go from pennies to thousands, which startups will become household names and which will crash and burn. You know which stocks to buy and when to sell them. You know about the housing market crash that doesn't happen, the tech boom that does, the exact moment when investing in electric vehicles stops being laughable and starts being lucrative. I'd graduated with $60,000 in student debt in my first life. It had crushed me, following me for years, preventing me from taking risks or building savings. Every payment had been a reminder of my failure to launch, my inability to be as successful as my younger sister. This time, I had 3 months until graduation and a brain full of winning lottery numbers. I know what you're thinking. Lottery tickets are suspicious, hard to claim. Draw attention? You're right. That's why I didn't use lottery numbers. Instead, I used sports betting. small amounts across multiple platforms. A few hundred here, 1,000 there, spread out so no single win was large enough to trigger scrutiny. I knew the outcomes of every major game for the next 3 months. I knew which underdogs would win, which favorites would choke, which players would have breakout performances. By the end of week 1, I'd turned $300, my entire savings from my campus job, into $42,000. By the end of week 2, I had $87,000. I moved the money carefully, withdrew in cash when possible, opened new bank accounts, created an LLC, made everything look legitimate and above board because the last thing I needed was an audit or questions about where a college student was getting this money. And while I was building my fortune, I was also studying Chen Tech. In my first life, I'd known almost nothing about the company. I'd prepared for the interview, of course, researched their products and mission statement, but I hadn't known the details, hadn't known that Marcus Chen, the boy genius who'd founded the company at 23, was struggling. His first product, a project management software, had a modest success, but nothing explosive. He was searching for the next big thing, burning through his initial investment capital, trying to figure out what would take his company from promising startup to industry leader. I knew what would do it. Because in my first life, in 2018, Chen Tech had launched a productivity app called FlowState that had revolutionized remote work. It was intuitive, powerful, and hit the market exactly 1 month before the pandemic made remote work mandatory. By 2020, Chen Tech was worth billions. Marcus Chen was on magazine covers. The company was synonymous with remote collaboration. But in 2015, FlowState didn't exist yet. Marcus Chen was still trying to figure out what to build next, and I had the blueprint in my head, every feature, every design choice, every element that had made FlowState successful. I could recreate it perfectly because I'd spent years using it. Everyone had. It was like knowing the exact formula for Coca-Cola or the secret algorithm for Google search. The question was what to do with that knowledge. I could try to get the job at Chen Tech and pitch the idea from the inside, but I wasn't going to get the job. Vanessa was going to take my interview slot, and even if I fought for it, even if I somehow kept it, I was a fresh graduate with no experience. Why would Marcus Chen listen to me? No, that wasn't the path to power. I needed to make him come to me. By the end of March, I had $200,000. I'd started making investments, carefully chosen stocks in companies I knew would soar. Tesla at $200 a share, Bitcoin at $250 per coin. I put 50 on this. 1,000 into cryptocurrency, spread across Bitcoin and Ethereum, and watched my net worth start to climb in ways that would have been impossible if I didn't know the future. But I also kept 100,000 liquid because I needed capital for what came next. I reached out to Professor Martinez, told him I wanted to work on an independent project for my final semester, a software prototype, something innovative. He was surprised. I'd been a decent student, but never particularly ambitious. Never someone who went above and beyond. What kind of software? He asked during our meeting in his cramped office. Productivity and project management, I said, but different from what's currently on the market. More intuitive. Better integration. Focused on remote collaboration. Remote work is a small market, he said, frowning. Most companies still operate in person. It won't stay small. I met his eyes. I think it's going to be huge, especially for distributed teams, creative industries, tech companies. The trend is already starting. It wasn't, really, not yet. But I made my case with the confidence of someone who'd lived through the proof. He was intrigued, agreed to sponsor the project, gave me access to university resources and a small grant. Not much, but enough. I hired developers. 3 of them, all freelance, all sworn to secrecy under NDAs. I paid them well, better than they'd get anywhere else for contract work, and gave them my exact specifications for FlowState. Where are these ideas coming from? One of them asked after the first design review. His name was David, and he was brilliant, a dropout from MIT who freelanced while working on his own projects. Research, I said, looking at gaps in the current market, pain points users complain about, wish lists from tech forums. True enough. I'd spent weeks in my hospital bed in my first life reading tech blogs and user forums, watching the industry I'd never gotten to be part of. David nodded slowly. It's good, he said. Really good. This could actually work. It will work, I said. By mid-April, we had a working prototype. Basic, buggy, but functional enough to demonstrate the concept. And by mid-April, the campaign to take my interview slot had begun in earnest. It started with Mom mentioning how interested Vanessa was in tech, how she'd been reading about the industry, how she thought she might really have a future there. Then Dad started talking about how important it was for Vanessa to find the right career path. She was so talented, so special. She just needed the right opportunity to shine. Then Vanessa herself started hanging around when I was studying, asking questions about my business classes, claiming she was fascinated. She'd been thinking, she said, that maybe communications and business had more in common than she'd thought. Maybe she should have minored in business. Maybe it wasn't too late to switch her focus. I played along, acted flattered by her interest, explained concepts patiently, let her believe she was being clever. Then, 3 weeks before my interview, Mom sat me down for a talk. Your father and I have been discussing something, she said. We were in the living room. She'd made tea. This was serious. We're concerned about Vanessa's future. Okay, I said neutrally. She's been struggling to find her path. You know how hard that can be. You've always been so focused. But Vanessa needs more guidance, more structure. I hadn't been focused. I'd been desperate. There's a difference. She's mentioned how inspiring she's found your work in business, Mom continued. How maybe she made a mistake choosing communications. And we think she might be right. Okay, I said again. The thing is, she's so young, still figuring things out. And that interview you have at Chen Tech, it sounds like such a wonderful opportunity. Not just for the job, but for the experience. The exposure to that kind of environment. Here it comes. It would be so valuable for Vanessa, Mom said. To see what it's like in a real tech company. To interview for that kind of position. Even if she didn't get the job, it would be such a learning experience. And you're so capable, Claire. You'll have other opportunities. You always land on your feet. But Vanessa, she needs this. I looked at my mother. Really looked at her. In my first life, this moment had broken something in me. The realization that my own mother valued me so little that she'd ask me to sacrifice my one chance for my sister's learning experience. The understanding that I would always be the one expected to step aside. Now I just felt calm. You want me to give Vanessa my interview slot, I said. Not give, Mom said quickly. Just let her use it. You can reach out to Professor Martinez again later. I'm sure he'd recommend you for other positions. But this specific opportunity right now, it would mean so much to Vanessa and to us. We'd be so proud of you for supporting your sister. Proud of me for stepping aside, for being a good sacrificial lamb. Does Vanessa know you're asking me this? I said. We discussed it as a family. Mom's voice was firm. Your father and I agree this is best. Vanessa is excited about the possibility, and you've always been such a good big sister. What about Professor Martinez? He recommended me specifically. I'm sure he'd be happy to have either of his students interview. You're both bright young women, and Vanessa can be very charming when she wants to be. Translation: Vanessa was prettier, more charismatic, more likely to impress. I was just the boring one who did the work. I let the silence stretch out, let Mom start to fidget, let her think she might have to push harder. Then I smiled. Okay, I said. Mom blinked. Okay? If it's that important to Vanessa, I'll call Professor Martinez tomorrow. Ask if she can interview instead. Really? Mom's gig? Relief was palpable. Oh, Claire, thank you. This is so mature of you, so selfless. Your father will be thrilled. And Vanessa, she'll be over the moon. I know, I said. I'm happy to help. Mom hugged me, told me I was a wonderful daughter, told me that this kind of sacrifice was what family was all about, that I'd be rewarded for my generosity someday. She had no idea how right she was. I called Professor Martinez the next day, just like I promised. Professor, I have an unusual request, I said. My sister Vanessa is interested in switching her career focus to tech. I was wondering if she could interview for the Chen Tech position instead of me. There was a long pause. Instead of you, he repeated. Yes, I think the experience would be really valuable for her, and I'm working on that independent project. I think I want to focus on that for now. Another pause. Professor Martinez was sharp. He'd always been sharp. Claire, is everything all right? Everything's fine. I just think this might be the right move. The recommendation was for you specifically. You did the work. You earned that opportunity. I know, but Vanessa is really motivated and she's great with people. I think she'd represent the university well. He sighed. If this is what you want, but I want you to know that I think you're making a mistake. This is your career, Claire, not your sister's. I understand. Thank you, Professor. He made the call. Chen Tech agreed to interview Vanessa instead. It wasn't hard. They were interviewing dozens of candidates. One switch didn't matter to them. Vanessa was ecstatic. She threw her arms around me, squealing about what an amazing sister I was. How she'd never forget this. How she'd make me proud. Mama and Dad praised me endlessly. Told Vanessa how lucky she was to have such a supportive older sister. Told me how mature I was being. None of them noticed that I was smiling. Because while they were celebrating Vanessa's good fortune, I was putting my real plan into motion. I reached out to Chen Tech directly. Not to HR, not to apply for a job, to Marcus Chen himself. I found his email through some creative LinkedIn stalking. He was active on the platform, responding to messages from entrepreneurs and developers. He clearly liked being accessible, being seen as approachable. I sent him a message. Mr. Chen, my name is Claire Liu. I'm a graduating senior at State University with a business degree and a prototype I think you'll find interesting. I've developed a productivity and project management software that addresses gaps in the current market, particularly for remote and distributed teams. I'd love 15 minutes of your time to demonstrate it. I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for a partner. Bold. Maybe too bold. But I had nothing to lose. He responded 3 days later. Claire, interesting pitch. I'm always open to seeing what new developers are working on. Can you send me a demo video or screenshots? If it's as promising as you say, we can schedule a call. I sent him a 5-minute demo video. David had helped me record it. We showed the core features of FlowState, the intuitive interface, the seamless integration across devices, the real-time collaboration tools, the smart notification system that learned your work patterns. I emphasized the remote work angle. Told him this was the future. That distributed teams were going to become the norm and companies needed better tools to manage them. Marcus Chen called me 2 days later. I want to see this in person, he said without preamble. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Absolutely. Bring your team. I want to meet everyone involved. It's just me and some contracted developers. I'm the lead on the project. A college student built this? He sounded skeptical. With help, but yes, I designed the features and user experience. I hired the developers to execute my vision. Ambitious. There was something new in his voice. Interest. Real interest. All right, Claire Liu, let's see if you're as impressive in person as you are over email. I went to Chen Tech headquarters the next day, brought my laptop and David, who'd agreed to help with the technical demonstration. The building was smaller than I expected, just 3 floors, maybe 40 employees total. Still a startup, scrappy and uncertain. Marcus Chen met us in a conference room. He was 26, younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and the kind of intensity that comes from being brilliant and knowing it. Show me, he said. We did, walked him through every feature, showed him how the interface worked, how teams could collaborate across time zones, how the smart features automated tedious tasks. Showed him the beta testing data we'd gathered from volunteers. All positive, all enthusiastic. Marcus watched without speaking, asked a few technical questions, pushed back on some of our design choices. David fielded the technical stuff while I explained the business rationale. When we finished, Marcus sat back in his chair. This is good, he said finally. Really good. Where'd you get the funding to develop this? I saved money, freelanced. Made some lucky investments. All true. And you did this in what, 2 months? More like 6 weeks of active development. The concept took longer. 6 weeks. He shook his head. You're either a genius or you stole this from somewhere. I didn't steal it. No, he said slowly. I don't think you did. Because if someone else had already built this, I'd know about it. This is new. He paused. This is what I've been looking for. My heart was pounding. Are you interested? Interested? Claire, I want to buy this. Name your price. I shook my head. It's not for sale. His eyebrows went up. No? I want a partnership. You have the infrastructure and the market presence. I have the product. We launch this together. Split ownership. Retain creative control. You're a college student, Marcus said. No offense, but why would I agree to split ownership with someone who has zero industry experience? Because I'm the one who figured out what you've been missing, I said. You've been trying to expand Chen Tech for 2 years. You've launched 3 products. None of them took off. You're running out of runway. I've done my research, Mr. Chen. You need a win. I'm offering you one. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. What are you asking for? 49% equity in a new venture. We form a subsidiary under Chen Tech. You provide the funding, the infrastructure, the marketing. I provide the product and continue to lead development. Profits split according to equity share. 49% is a lot. 51% means you still have control, and if this works the way I know it will, 49% of something is worth more than 100% of nothing. Marcus Chen laughed. Actually laughed. You're either incredibly confident or incredibly naive. I'm confident, I said. Because I know this will work. The market is moving toward remote work. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but it's coming. And when it does, we're going to be the only company with a product that's ready. We're going to dominate. He studied me for a long moment. How old are you? 21? Jesus. When I was 21, I was still trying to figure out how to properly pitch investors. He drummed his fingers on the table. All right, I'm interested, but I'm not agreeing to 49% without due diligence. I need to see the code. Need my team to evaluate it. Need to understand the full scope of what you're proposing. That's fair. And I want exclusivity. You don't shop this around to my competitors while I'm reviewing it. Agreed, 30 days. 60. 45. He smiled. Deal. I'll have my lawyers draw up an NDA and a preliminary agreement. If everything checks out, we'll negotiate terms. We shook hands. His grip was firm. You're impressive, Claire Lou, he said. I have a feeling you're going to surprise a lot of people. That's the plan, I said. I left Chen Tech that day with the assigned NDA and the beginning of a partnership that would change everything. And the next day, Vanessa went in for her interview. She came home glowing, threw herself on the couch and gushed to Mom and Dad about how amazing it had been, how impressive the office was, how smart and handsome Marcus Chen was, how well she thought it went. He asked me about my leadership experience, she said breathlessly. And I told him about organizing the charity fashion show last year. He seemed really impressed. She'd organized a fashion show where she modeled and her friends did the actual work. Classic Vanessa. And he asked about my technical skills, and I told him I was a fast learner, that I was really excited about technology and innovation. She didn't have any technical skills, couldn't code, didn't understand software development, had no idea what Chen Tech's products actually did. He also asked if I had any ideas for the company's future direction, Vanessa continued, and I said something about social media integration, making things more connected. He seemed to think that was interesting. Every company talked about social media integration in 2015. It was the most generic answer possible. How do you think it went? Mom asked eagerly. Really well. He said he's interviewing several candidates, but I think I stood out. He kept saying I had an interesting perspective. Vanessa grinned. I might actually get this job. Can you imagine? Me working at Chen Tech. You deserve it, Dad said firmly. You worked hard for this opportunity. I'd worked hard. Vanessa had shown up and smiled. Thanks again for letting me take your slot, Claire, Vanessa said, turning to me. I know this was your opportunity first. I really appreciate it. No problem, I said. I hope you get it. I did. I genuinely hoped she got the job because I wanted her there. Wanted her working as a junior employee at Chen Tech under Marcus Chen while I was building an empire. But she wasn't going to get it. I knew that already. Because 2 days after her interview, Marcus Chen called me. We had an interesting candidate interview yesterday, he said. Vanessa Liu, any relation? My sister, I said carefully. I thought so. Same last name, same university. She mentioned she was interviewing in place of her sister who'd recommended her. He paused. That was you, wasn't it? You gave up your interview slot for her. It seemed important to my family. Important enough that you'd sacrifice a job opportunity? I had a better opportunity, I said. I was already planning to pitch you my project. The interview was redundant. Another pause. Then, your sister is not qualified for the position. I know. You knew she wouldn't get it, and you let her interview anyway. I let her interview because my family asked me to. Whether she got the job was between you and her. Marcus laughed. Cold, I like it. His tone shifted. Listen, my team has finished reviewing your code. They're impressed. I'm impressed. Let's talk terms. Can you come in tomorrow? Absolutely. Good. And Claire, don't give away any more opportunities. You're better than that. We negotiated for 3 days. Marcus was tough, smart, exactly as sharp as his reputation suggested. He pushed back on equity share, on control, on timeline. I held firm on the things that mattered and gave ground on things that didn't. In the end, we agreed on 45% equity for me, 55% for Chen Tech. I'd lead product development with final say on features and design. Chen Tech would handle funding, infrastructure, marketing, and sales. We'd launch in Q4 2015 with a full marketing push in early 2016. We called the product Flow State. Chen Tech presents Flow State, a revolutionary new approach to productivity and collaboration. The paperwork took weeks. Lawyers, contracts, agreements. I graduated college in the middle of negotiations. Mom and Dad came to the ceremony, spent the whole time talking about how proud they were of Vanessa for trying something new, for putting herself out there. Vanessa had gotten a rejection letter from Chen Tech 3 days after her interview. She'd cried, said she didn't understand what went wrong, that she'd been so sure Marcus liked her. There were probably more qualified candidates, Mom had said, shooting me a look. People with more experience. The implication was clear. If I hadn't given up my slot, if I'd interviewed instead, I probably wouldn't have gotten it either. We were both inadequate. The only difference was that Vanessa had been brave enough to try. I didn't correct her, just smiled and said I was sure Vanessa would find something great. By July, Flow State was in beta testing with 50 companies. By August, we had 200. By September, we had our first paying customers, a distributed design agency and a software startup with employees across 3 continents. The reviews were incredible, intuitive, game-changing. Finally, a tool that actually understands how modern teams work. By October, we had 5,000 users. By November, 20,000. By December, 100,000. Chen Tech's revenue doubled, then tripled. Marcus was beside himself. Investors were circling. Other companies were trying to copy our features, but they couldn't match our integration, our polish, our understanding of what users actually needed. You were right, Marcus said during one of our development meetings. We were working 16-hour days, refining features, fixing bugs, planning the next version. About all of it, the market, the timing, the execution. How did you know? Research, I said, and intuition. Intuition like yours is worth millions. He had no idea how right he was. My 45% of flow state equity was currently worth approximately $8 million on paper. And that was before the pandemic. I was 22 years old, a year out of college, and I was already a multimillionaire. I paid off my student loans in full, bought a small apartment, invested everything else. Diversified, built wealth quietly while flow state exploded in popularity. My family had no idea. I didn't tell them about the partnership, didn't mention my equity share, just said I was doing freelance consulting for a tech company. They barely listened. They were too busy worrying about Vanessa, who'd graduated with a communications degree and no job prospects. She'd applied to 30 positions, gotten 3 interviews, no offers. It's such a tough market, Mom said at Sunday dinner. I'd started showing up again, playing the dutiful daughter, watching them, waiting. Vanessa is so talented, but these companies just don't see it. Have you tried looking at tech companies? I asked innocently. The tech sector is really growing. Lots of opportunities. Vanessa made a face. I don't want to work in tech. It's so boring, just sitting at a computer all day. Some tech companies have communications positions. Marketing, PR, social media management. You'd be good at that. Maybe. She didn't sound interested. In my first life, she'd landed a job at a mid-tier marketing firm 6 months after graduation. She'd been miserable there, complaining constantly about the work, the pay, the lack of recognition. But she'd stayed for 5 years because the job market was terrible and she had no better options. This life would be different for her too, just not in the way she'd hoped. By 2016, FlowState had 500,000 users. We launched a premium tier with advanced features. Companies paid $200 per user per year for the full suite. Within 6 months, we had 50,000 premium subscribers, 10 million in annual recurring revenue. Chen Tech was valued at $80 million. My share was worth $36 million. Marcus offered to buy me out. You've earned it, he said. Take the money, retire. Start something new. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. I'm not selling, I said. Why not? This is life-changing money, Claire. Because this isn't the peak. We're still growing. In 2 years, we'll be worth 5 times this. In 5 years, 10 times. That's optimistic? No, that's informed. I met his eyes. Trust me. He did. Maybe because I'd been right about everything else. Maybe because he was starting to suspect that I knew something he didn't. Either way, he stopped pushing. We expanded, hired more developers, opened offices in 3 cities, built out enterprise features for large corporations. IBM became a client, then Microsoft, then Google, using our product internally, even as they developed competing tools. By 2018, we had 2 million users. Chen Tech was valued at $300 million. My share was worth $135 million. And then, in early 2019, Marcus came to me with a proposal. I want to restructure, he said. Chen Tech is basically 2 companies now, the original business, the project management software and other products, and FlowState. FlowState is 90% of our revenue. I'm thinking we should split them, make FlowState its own entity. Why? Because it's big enough to stand alone. And because investors are more interested in FlowState than Chen Tech as a whole. If we spin it off, we can raise capital more easily, scale faster. I pretended to think about it. What would the structure look like? Depends on what you want. We could keep the current equity split, just in the new entity. Or we could renegotiate. Bring in new investors. I've had conversations with some VC firms. They're interested. How interested? 500 million interested for a 30% stake. 500 million for 30% meant a valuation of around 1.7 billion for the company. My 45% would be worth $765 million. Same. $750 million at 24 years old. I took a breath, let it out slowly. Let's do it. We spent 6 months on the restructuring. lawyers, accountants, endless meetings. In the end, Flow State became its own company. I retained 45%. Marcus kept 30%. Investors got 25%. The valuation was actually higher than projected, $2 billion at launch. My share was worth $900 million. I was 24 years old and I was almost a billionaire. Forbes ran a profile. The youngest female tech founder in America. They interviewed me about my success, my vision, my plans for the future. I talked about remote work, about the changing nature of employment, about building tools that empowered people. I didn't mention rebirth or future knowledge or revenge, just smiled and said I'd gotten lucky with good timing. Mom called me after the article came out. Claire, her voice was strange. We saw the article. About Flow State, about you. Oh, yeah, it was a nice piece. You didn't tell us. She sounded hurt. About the company, about your success. We had no idea you were doing so well. I mentioned I was consulting, working in tech. You said consulting. You didn't say you owned $1 billion company. I don't own it. I have equity in it. There's a difference. Claire. Dad's voice came through the background. Mom had put me on speaker. This is incredible. We're so proud of you. Were they? They'd never been proud before. Never thought I'd amount to anything special. But now that there were dollar signs attached to my name, now that I had status and recognition, suddenly they were proud. Thanks, I said flatly. We should have dinner, Mom said. Celebrate as a family. You and Vanessa both. Our successful daughters. Vanessa, right. She'd finally gotten a job at a small PR firm. She was making $35,000 a year and complaining about it constantly. Sure, I said. Dinner sounds great. We met at an upscale restaurant, the kind with a dress code and a wine list that required a sommelier to navigate. I paid, obviously. I was the one with money. Vanessa was quiet through most of the meal, picking at her food, avoiding eye contact. Mom and Dad kept trying to engage her, bringing up her work, her accomplishments, trying to include her in the conversation. But every topic circled back to me, to Flow State, to my success. Finally, Vanessa put down her fork. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. When did you start Flow State? When did you develop the product? During my senior year of college, spring semester. She went very still. Spring semester, so around the same time as that interview at Chen Tech. Around then, yeah. The interview I took. Her voice was tight. The interview you gave me. The interview you wanted, I corrected gently. I was happy to let you have it. I was already working on my own project. You knew, Vanessa's eyes were bright, you knew you didn't need that job, you knew you had something better, and you let me take it anyway. Let me think I was getting some amazing opportunity. It could have been an amazing opportunity, I said, if you'd gotten the job. I didn't get the job, I got rejected, while you were building $1 billion company. Vanessa, Mom said sharply, what's gotten into you? Claire's success doesn't take anything away from you. Doesn't it? I wanted to ask. Doesn't it take away the narrative you built? The idea that Vanessa was the talented one, the special one, the one who deserved everything? Doesn't it destroy the comfortable fiction that I was the lesser daughter? But I didn't say that. Just smiled and said, I hope you're doing well at your job, Vanessa. PR is a tough field. She stared at me. And in that moment, I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. She'd figured it out. Figured out that I'd let her take the interview knowing she'd fail. That I'd stepped aside not out of generosity, but out of certainty. That I'd never needed their scraps because I was building a feast. You've changed, she said quietly. No, I said. I just stopped letting you take things from me. The dinner ended awkwardly. We didn't do it again. Flow State continued to grow. By late 2019, we had 5 million users. By early 2020, when the pandemic hit and remote work became mandatory overnight, we had 10 million. By the end of 2020, we had 40 million. Everyone needed us. Every company, every organization, every team that suddenly had to figure out how to work from home. Flow state became as essential as email, as ubiquitous as Microsoft Office. We were on every device, in every industry, in every country. Our valuation went from 2 billion to 10 billion to 20 billion in the space of 18 months. My share went from 900 million to 4 billion to 9 billion. I was 26 years old, and I was one of the richest women in America. Forbes interviewed me again. So did Time. So did every major tech publication. They asked about my vision, my strategy, how I'd predicted the remote work revolution. I didn't predict it, I said honestly. I just believed it was inevitable. Technology was making distance irrelevant. It was only a matter of time before companies figured that out. I just wanted to make sure they had the right tools when they did. The interview made me look like a genius, a visionary, someone who'd seen the future while everyone else was stuck in the past. If only they knew. By 2021, I was getting acquisition offers. Apple wanted to buy FlowState. So did Microsoft. So did Google. Offers ranging from 30 billion to 50 billion. I turned them all down. "You're being stubborn," Marcus said. He'd become a good friend over the years, a true partner. One of the few people who knew me well enough to be honest. "This is an enormous amount of money, generational wealth. You could take the money and do anything you wanted." "I am doing what I want," I said. "You want to run a company? Deal with investors and board meetings and quarterly earnings calls?" "I want to prove something," I said. "Prove what?" "That I wasn't the worthless daughter my family thought I was. That I could succeed on a scale they couldn't imagine. That giving away my interview slot was the best thing that ever happened to me because it lit a fire that burned away every doubt, every limitation, every small expectation they'd ever placed on me." But I didn't say that to Marcus. "That we can build something that lasts," I said instead, "on us, not just a product, a legacy." He studied me. "Sometimes I think there's a whole story you're not telling me." "Maybe there is. Will you tell me someday?" "Maybe," I said. "If you earn it." He laughed. "Fair enough." By 2022, Flow State was worth $30 billion. My share was worth 13.5 billion. I bought a house. A real house, not just an apartment. 10,000 square feet overlooking the ocean. I hired staff, invested in other companies, started a venture capital fund focused on female founders. I also started buying up Chen Tech's other properties. The original company still existed, still ran the legacy products. Marcus wanted to focus on Flow State, so I offered to take them off his hands. We negotiated. I bought the entire Chen Tech legacy business for $80 million, including headquarters, including all existing staff, including hiring authority. In 2023, I restructured Chen Tech as an independent entity, made it a subsidiary of my personal holding company, renovated the offices, expanded the business, brought on new products, and I started hiring. I needed a communications director, someone to manage our PR, our social media, our public image, someone with experience in the field who understood media relations and brand building. I put out a job listing, competitive salary, excellent benefits, opportunity for growth. We got 300 applications. One of them was from Vanessa Liu. I saw her name in the applicant database and felt something click into place, like a puzzle piece sliding home, like the universe arranging itself according to plan. The universe, or me. Same thing. I told HR to bring her in for an interview. The interview was scheduled for a Tuesday in June. I cleared my entire afternoon, told my assistant I wasn't to be disturbed, sat in my office, the CEO's office, the corner office with the view of the city, and waited. Vanessa arrived 15 minutes early, professional, nervous. She wore a navy suit that was probably the nicest thing she owned, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her portfolio. My assistant showed her in. "Ms. Liu is here for her interview," she said. Vanessa walked in, saw me behind the desk, froze. "Hello, Vanessa," I said calmly. "Please, have a seat." She stood in the doorway, staring. "Claire." Surprised? I I didn't realize you were. She trailed off. "The CEO of Chen Tech? I thought you might have done your research before applying." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please, sit. Let's talk about the position." She sat slowly, like she was expecting the chair to collapse under her. "I didn't know you owned Chen Tech." "I don't own Flow State anymore. Sold my shares last year, but I kept Chen Tech. Thought it would be a nice project. Building it back up, making it something special." I opened the folder in front of me. Her resume, her cover letter. "You applied for the communications director position." "Yes." "Why?" "Because," she swallowed, "because I have experience in communications. 5 years at Mercer and Associates. I've managed social media campaigns, handled press releases, coordinated with journalists. I'm good at what I do." "Are you?" I skimmed her resume. "According to this, you left Mercer and Associates 6 months ago. Have you been employed since?" "No, I've been looking for the right opportunity." "The right opportunity?" I set down the resume. "What makes Chen Tech the right opportunity?" "It's a growing company with a strong reputation. The founder is someone who's respected in the industry. Seems like a place where I could make a real contribution." "The founder is your sister?" "Yes." "Does that factor into your interest?" Vanessa's jaw tightens. "I'm not applying because you're my sister. I'm applying because I'm qualified." "Qualified?" I leaned back in my chair. "Let's talk about qualifications. You have a degree in communications, 5 years of experience at a mid-tier firm, no notable achievements that I can see, no major campaigns or successful launches. What makes you think you're qualified to be communications director at a tech company?" "I have the skills. I know how to manage a brand, how to tell a story, how to connect with audiences." "Do you?" I picked up a printout. "I looked at some of your work from Mercer. Your social media campaigns had minimal engagement. Your press releases were generic. The one product launch you led got almost no media coverage. Where's the evidence that you're good at this?" Her face flushed. "Those were challenging clients. The products weren't always easy to market." "Bad products or bad marketing?" I asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you coasted for 5 years on mediocrity and then got let go when the company downsized." "I wasn't let go. I left." "Really? Because according to my sources at Mercer, you were part of a round of layoffs, performance-based layoffs." Vanessa's hands clenched in her lap. "You investigated me?" "I investigate all my candidates. Due diligence, you understand." "This isn't due diligence. This is—" She stopped. "This is what?" I asked pleasantly. She stared at me, and I could see it happening, the realization, the understanding of exactly what this was. "This is revenge," she said quietly. "Revenge for what?" "For the interview, for Chen Tech, for everything." "Oh, Vanessa," I smiled. "This isn't revenge. If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't have invited you here. I would have just rejected your application. This," I gestured around the office, "this is poetic justice." "What's the difference?" "Revenge is about making someone suffer. Justice is about showing them the consequences of their choices." I stood up, walked to the window. The city spread out below me like a kingdom. My kingdom. "Do you remember when Mom asked me to give you my interview slot?" "Of course I remember." "Do you remember what you said to me afterwards when you got the interview?" She was quiet. "You said, 'Thank you for letting me have this opportunity.'" I know it meant a lot to you, but I think this is where I'm supposed to be. I think this is my destiny." I turned to face her. "Do you remember that?" "Yes," she whispered. "You were so certain, so confident that you deserved it more than I did, that you were meant for something special and I was meant to step aside and watch." I walked back to my desk, sat down. "And you were right. This was your destiny, just not in the way you thought. Claire, I gave you that interview slot knowing you wouldn't get the job," I said. "I gave it to you because I knew you'd fail, and I knew that failure would teach you something. But it didn't, did it? You didn't learn. You kept thinking you were special, kept thinking success was owed to you, kept expecting the world to recognize your brilliance without you actually having to be brilliant. That's not fair, isn't it? You took my opportunity. You took something I earned and you used it for your own benefit. And when you failed, you blamed the company, the interview process, the job market, everyone but yourself." I picked up her resume again. "And now you're here, applying to work for the company you rejected, for the sister you used." "I didn't use you. Mom and Dad asked you to is. Mom and Dad asked, and you let them. You could have said no. You could have told them I earned that interview and I deserved to keep it, but you didn't, because you wanted it and you didn't care what it cost me." Vanessa's eyes were shining. "I was young. I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected. "And now I'm making one." She went very still. "Are you going to give me the job?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The pretty girl who'd always gotten what she wanted. The favorite daughter. The one who'd taken from me without a second thought because she'd been raised to believe she deserved everything and I deserved nothing. She was older now. Harder. The years hadn't been kind to her confidence. She'd been rejected, overlooked, underestimated. The world hadn't rolled over for her the way our parents had. She knew what it felt like to be on the other side now. "No," I said, I'm not going to give you the job." Her face crumpled. "Claire, please, I need this. I've been looking for months. I need the money. I need him." "What you need," I interrupted, is to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't just take from people and expect them to forgive you because you're family. That being pretty and charming isn't enough. You have to actually be good at something. I am good at something. Then go be good at it somewhere else." She stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. "You're cruel." "No," I said. "I'm fair. I gave you exactly what you gave me, nothing." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her bag and walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. "I'm sorry," she said without turning around. "For what I took from you. I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't give me back what I lost. It doesn't undo the hurt. It doesn't change the fact that when I needed my family to believe in me, you all chose you instead." She left without another word. I sat at my desk for a long time after she was gone, staring at the city, thinking about that interview slot, about the choice I'd made to give it up, about the life I'd lost and the life I'd built. In my first life, I'd died alone and forgotten, a failure, someone who'd never amounted to anything because she'd never been given the chance. In this life, I was a billionaire, a CEO, a name people respected. The interview slot didn't matter anymore. Neither did Vanessa's betrayal. Neither did my family's favoritism. I'd won. The rest was just cleanup. Marcus called me that evening. "I heard you interviewed your sister today. News traveled fast." "I did." "Did you hire her?" "No." "Why not? She's your sister." "Because she's not qualified. And because I don't owe her anything." There was a pause, then, "Fair enough. Your company, your choice. But Claire, yeah? Make sure you're hiring her or not hiring her for the right reasons. Not just to prove a point." "I'm not proving a point," I said. "I'm maintaining standards." "If you say so." After I hung up, I thought about what he'd said. About revenge versus justice. About whether rejecting Vanessa was about her qualifications or about my hurt. Maybe it was both. Maybe it didn't matter. She'd applied to my company, walked into my office, asked me for an opportunity, and I'd evaluated her fairly, or as fairly as anyone can evaluate someone who's hurt them, and found her wanting. That wasn't revenge. That was just business. A week later, I got an email from my mother. "Claire, we need to talk about Vanessa. She's devastated. She told us what happened at the interview, how you humiliated her, how you treated her. Cruelly. I know you've been successful, but that doesn't give you the right to hurt your family. We raised you better than that." I didn't respond immediately, let the email sit in my inbox for a day while I decided what to say. Finally, I wrote back, "Mom, I didn't humiliate Vanessa. I interviewed her for a position she applied for and determined she wasn't a good fit. That's not cruelty, that's business. If she wanted the job, she should have been more qualified. And if you're upset about how I treated her, maybe you should think about how you treated me when you asked me to give up my interview slot 8 years ago. You taught me that family means sacrifice. I'm just done being the one who sacrifices." She didn't respond. Neither did Dad. Neither did Vanessa. And that was fine. I didn't need their approval anymore. Didn't need their love or their recognition. I'd built something without them. Something bigger and better than they'd ever imagined I could. Chen Tech continued to grow. We launched new products, hired talented people, people who were actually qualified, who actually earned their positions, built a culture of excellence and innovation. Vanessa found a job eventually. I heard through the grapevine that she was working at a small startup, making $40,000 a year, still in communications, still struggling. I didn't feel bad about it. Maybe that made me a bad person. Maybe it made me ruthless. But it also made me successful. Flow State was acquired in 2024 by Amazon for $50 billion. My remaining stake was worth $2 billion after the sale. Combined with my other investments and Chentech's value, my net worth was around $4 billion. $4 billion. At 29 years old, I thought about my first life sometimes, about dying in that hospital bed, about the years of poverty and struggle and quiet desperation, about the interview I'd given away and the life I'd lost because of it. That person was gone, dead and buried and never coming back. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who would never again let anyone take from her what she'd earned. I attended my college reunion that year, 10 years since graduation, the first time I'd been back to campus since getting my degree and walking away. People treated me differently now. Wanted to talk to me, to be near me, to bask in my success and claim some connection to it. "Oh, we had a class together. I remember you from the library. We should catch up." People who'd never given me the time of day when I was just Claire Lou, struggling student from a family that didn't believe in her. I smiled and made small talk and networked, took photos, signed a few autographs for people's kids who wanted to meet the woman from Forbes. Professor Martinez found me near the end of the evening. "Claire," he said warmly, I was hoping you'd be here." "Professor, it's good to see you." "It's just Robert now. You're far too successful to call me professor." He smiled. "I've been following your career. It's extraordinary what you've built." Flow State changed everything. "It was good timing," I said modestly. "It was vision and courage." He paused. "I've always wondered something. That interview slot you gave to your sister, do you regret it?" I thought about that, about the question beneath the question, about whether I regretted the choice that had led to my death in one timeline and my fortune in another. "No," I said finally, I don't regret it. It taught me something important." "What's that?" "That the only person I can rely on to believe in me is myself. That opportunities aren't given, they're made. And that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing something you wanted because it forces you to build something better." Professor Martinez studied me. "You've changed. You're harder than you used to be." "I'm stronger," I corrected. "Is there a difference?" "Yes," I said. "Hard breaks under pressure. Strong bends and bounces back." He nodded slowly. I'm proud of you, Claire. Not just for your success, for surviving. He didn't know how literally he meant that. I left the reunion that night feeling settled, complete. The ghosts of my first life were finally laid to rest. I'd proven everything I needed to prove, to myself, to my family, to everyone who'd ever doubted me. The girl who'd died alone in a hospital bed was gone. In her place was a woman who'd conquered the world. And it had all started with an interview slot I'd been forced to give away. 5 years later, in 2029, I received an invitation to speak at a Women in Tech conference. The theme was Overcoming Adversity, Stories of Success Against the Odds. I accepted, prepared a speech, flew to San Francisco, and stood on stage in front of 3,000 women and told them a version of my story. Not the real story, not about rebirth or time travel or revenge, but a story about being underestimated, about giving away an opportunity and building something better, about refusing to let other people define my worth. The audience loved it, stood and applauded, rushed me afterwards to ask questions and take photos and thank me for inspiring them. And standing in the back of the room, I saw Vanessa. She looked older, tired. She was still beautiful, but it was a faded beauty now, the kind that comes from years of disappointment wearing away the shine. Our eyes met across the crowd. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then she turned and left. I didn't follow her, didn't call out, just watched her go and felt nothing, no satisfaction, no anger, no lingering hurt, just nothing. The wound had healed. The scar remained, but it didn't hurt anymore. That night, alone in my hotel room, I thought about that interview slot one last time. About the chain of events it had set in motion. About the two lives I'd lived, one where I'd given away my future and one where I'd stolen it back. In the end, it wasn't about the interview. It was never about the interview. It was about the choice to fight. The choice to believe in myself even when no one else did. The choice to take what I'd lost and turn it into fuel. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You were right. I wasn't good enough. Maybe I never will be. But I'm trying. For what it's worth, I'm trying. Vanessa. Finally understanding. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, good, keep trying, that's all any of us can do. I sent it, put the phone down, stood at the window and looked out at the city lights spreading into the darkness like stars. Somewhere out there, my sister was trying to build a life, trying to become someone better than she'd been. Maybe she'd succeed. Maybe she wouldn't. It wasn't my problem anymore. I'd given her an interview slot once, a lifetime ago. And in return, she'd given me the motivation to build an empire. We were even now. The rest was up to her. I turned away from the window. Tomorrow I had meetings, deals to close, a company to run, a life to live, a life where I was powerful, successful, and entirely free. The girl who died in a hospital bed would have been proud, and maybe that was enough.